This is a pure arcade game, a fast action-packed journey through 6 very different worlds where lightning-fast reflexes and furious fire button action are your only hope of survival. Your mission orders are simple. You must destroy the planet Draconia, in theory possible. In practice, this planet, unnatural, has been formed over many centuries by 6 of the most feared rulers that have ever existed. These rulers, exiled from their home galaxy, have ravished and plundered space, using the worlds they have destroyed and the life forms they have created to build this planet of fear and death. Now, an end must be put to the reign of terror. A large-scale attack will prove too costly. A single fighter craft, approaching undetected, may have a chance. You have that chance. Step right up for a suicide mission.
So it took me over a month to get this far and beat the game. And you'd think, once I got there, it'd become nice and easy, right? No, not necessarily, no. Not a chance. Sorry. I've made my cameo. It's time for the hoodie.
An Amiga original coming out in the late fall/early winter of 1988, first in Europe and shortly after in America. The personal guesses would be September, October, Britain, November, December over here in the States, which I'm basing off of magazine reviews and coming soons. Today we will be covering the appropriately named Menace. It was developed by Dave Jones of DMA Design, their first game going on to create Lemmings, Grand Theft Auto, and morphing into Rockstar. So still going strong. Perhaps more well known at the time, and even with Lemmings, through their publisher, Psygnosis. Although in this case, Menace was actually published by a subsidiary of Psygnosis, Cyclops, which dealt primarily in budget titles. I've seen people falsely proclaim this as Psygnosis' first game as well, but no, they were already pretty well known. Ports would be developed for the Atari ST around the same time, maybe a month later. The Commodore 64 would follow the ST in the summer of 1989, and finally DOS in time for Christmas, over a year after the original. An Atari 800 version was being worked on, and what's there has been unearthed, but it was stopped when the programmer fell ill. Today we are covering the original Amiga version. So Menace is a horizontal side-scrolling shooter, a quote-unquote R-type clone. An unfair designation. Apparently anything that is a horizontal space shooter is an R-type clone, even though that was a Gradius clone. If anything, it's taking more from Gradius, but we're not even in space here. I think for this level, we're actually underwater. In other words, it's not a clone, although as you can hear from the background, it is certainly a bitch. Let me tell you, this is not the game you have been led to believe through other people's reviews, or even your own looks at the game from back in the day. I've heard this game called easy, but a great ride. I've heard it called bad because it's easy. Curious statements from people who have clearly never gotten past the 4th level. The reason you are hearing me so angry on the first level and with some of the first enemies there, it's not because this level is hard. In fact, the first 3 levels are relatively easy. It's because I am expecting to level up to a certain degree in order just to have a chance at the 4th level. Or the first words out of my mouth from the back of the box. This is a pure arcade game, and yes, for better and for worse, this is that. Some release information. Amiga World, December 88. Spotted in London at the personal computer show, Psygnosis lengthened its string of games with a shoot-em-up called Menace. Their review would come in March of 89. And to illustrate how far off these magazines could be with their reviews, this is a March issue, and this is a letter from December 12th. Hence, the game came out late 88 in America. A real tearjerker of a letter from Miss Saray DeKel about her brother who purchased an Amiga shortly before his death of AIDS. He mastered the intricacies of the computer in spite of excruciating pain and rapidly encroaching paralysis, producing a wealth of original art and music which is uniquely his and luminously beautiful. The review coming from Lewis Wallace. Menace is the pure, undiluted, and unconcentrated essence of arcade action. Your goal is to destroy 6 levels representing the different areas of the planet Draconia. There is an ocean, a graveyard, a garden, a futuristic city, an ancient city, and a mountain range created in 64-color extra half-bright mode and displayed in overscan. The highly detailed, smooth-scrolling screens are nearly equal to coin-op arcade game graphics. The animation is exceptional. Enemies wiggle, roll, rotate, rocket, undulate, fly, swim, bite, jump, and blast. My favorite is level 3, the alien graveyard with its skulls, ghosts, goblins, and bouncing heads. Digital sound effects, speech, and background music accompany the game. If you like hot arcade action, try Menace. It is challenging, highly addicting, and as good as any other arcade game I've played. Psygnosis is credited with their Liverpool location as they had not yet established an American home base. Distributed by Computer Software Services in America from Addison, Illinois. $29.95. Also notice the screenshot, which is quite lacking in color. That's this level, yet it's gray instead of a rich blue. It makes me question if this game is truly using extra half-bright mode. Pirates was also claimed to be 64 colors, but what I found out by taking actual screenshots was that it was using separate 32-color palettes for the foreground and the background. The Amiga can do all kinds of awesome tricks with the graphics. For example, the score area on the bottom of the screen. That is a completely separate full screen. Notice how the top fades before the bottom. I believe the score area to be 640 by 200 medium res with its own separate 16-color palette. None of the other versions can replicate the score area, which for me means there's multiple resolutions on the Amiga. The other thing that makes me question extra half-bright mode is that the game runs so fast. SimCity has a 16-color version and a 64-color version, confirmed by me through actual screenshots. But when you add the extra bit planes, there is a noticeable decrease in the speed. So what we could be looking at is Psygnosis saying that there are more than 32 colors here. Just tell them it's 64 and don't bother with the techno jargon. I guess the real question would be, does this game run on an Amiga 1000? If it does, it can't be EHP. If it doesn't, then it probably is. Now, the game is definitely using overscan, NTSC overscan, despite being made in Europe. It's that perfect compromise between 320 by 200 NTSC and 320 by 256 PAL. Overscan in NTSC low resolution almost reaches that PAL res. Beautiful two-way parallax. The best quality of this game undoubtedly is the graphics. It would be right at home next to any arcade shoot-em-up of the late 1980s. Now, as we reach the boss here on the 3rd level, let me just tell you that they suck. Going guns blazing is the only strategy for most of them. It's better to take a few hits at the start and get rid of them fast rather than attempt to figure out any pattern. There is no pattern. You can't dodge their bullets and shoot them. If you wait around too long, their attack phase changes and homes in on you. Without some shields and ammo, you're probably doomed, and with them, they're guaranteed to shrink. The 5th level boss is the only one of note because there is an actual pattern there. The top 20 games of 1989, courtesy of Amiga World. So are we noting the pain in the background? The 18th best game of 1989, Menace, with over 60 varieties of attackers, 6 levels of play. How would you know how many levels there are in this game? And 2 degrees of difficulty. Menace makes you appreciate a rapid-fire joystick. The 64-color graphics, combined with digital speech, sound effects, and background music, set the scene. And as I fail to get the power-up I needed in that situation, let us talk about the gameplay. Now, unlike most reviewers, I respect our collective intelligence. I'm not gonna tell you how a space shooter works. The only thing that would be uniquely worth discussing is the power-up system. And this would have to be the most unintuitive power-up system I have ever encountered. To get a power-up, you have to destroy an entire wave of enemies, and that itself is not abnormal. But what pops up as the default power-up every time is not actually a power-up. It's a bonus to your score. I've watched people play this for the first time, and if they're lucky enough to destroy an entire wave of enemies to get a power-up, they're usually at the left end of the screen, and before you know it, it's gone. If they do get it, they don't fully grasp what's happened. Conveniently, the first voice sample that you will hear in the game is the worst. Menace. You have to shoot the power-up multiple times for it to change to the next in the line, which would be the cannons. But that's not it. For both the cannons and the lasers, the first time you get it, nothing actually happens unless you're paying attention to the appearance of your ship. When you first get those power-ups, a cannon or a laser will appear physically on your ship, but you will have no ammo. You have to get it a second time. And as you're seeing in the background, some power-ups can actually hurt you initially, like the speed up. You can get so fast that you're just going to run into all the enemies and kill yourself. Bonus cannons, lasers, speed up, outriders, force field, and finally, taunting you at the end, shields. It took me weeks just to memorize the sequence by feel because it happens so fast you can't even look at it. Is it clear to everyone yet that this is not an easy game? It is like an arcade game. It lures you in with the first 3 levels because they're nice and easy. You could even get to the first level boss without getting any power-ups, just by dodging enemies. You think it's easy, but then the carpet gets pulled from underneath you. Oh, you like this game, do you? Well, how about some more quarters? And then you have to ask yourself, what's the intention here? Is this supposed to go into an arcade cabinet? If it is, success. Or is this a game meant to go into your home? And if so, is $30 enough quarters to win a game? This is rookie mode. The game goes from easy to impossible in one level. You know, but we might only have one life, but we do have unlimited continues, right?
Fuck this! You have no fucking chance! This is stupid!
The answer is no.
Oh, nice! Thanks for the bonus!
You only have one life. You need all of the power-ups from the previous levels in order to survive the last ones. The continue system is a joke, but it's there to keep the newcomers hooked, because if you continue on the second or third levels, you will be able to reach that level's boss and beat it. But you're not going to win this game through continues. Computer Gaming World with a brief look at the game, January of '89. Fast arcade action powers players through the planet Draconi in an attempt to destroy it. Somehow your superiors decided that one ship alone could do the job, and of course, it's you. This is a typical Psygnosis high-quality release. Amazing Computing, April '89. This is kind of an awkward review from Jeffrey Scott Hall, which reads more like Psygnosis wrote it. I imagine he's struggling to fill a word count here. Menace is perhaps one of the best games ever released from Psygnosis Software. The manual included with the game explains all the bonus items and their functions, along with other important information. Oh, tell me all about the important information contained in this game's 2-page manual. Not even the story is in the manual. It's just on the box. Who keeps the box around to read the story? And even with the power-ups, the manual doesn't help. You have to play the game and memorize it by feel. It's a shooter. It doesn't need much, but don't contextualize it as being good. Menace combines great sound effects, graphics, music, and visual effects for what is certain to be a hit with all the arcade addicts out there. There was an ad for the game along with a couple others in this May issue of Amiga Plus. Their review came in June-July of '89. Instead of sending a whole fleet of ships to destroy this menace, just a lone ship is sent. Yours, of course! The graphics are fair and the sound effects fit the game, but I noticed the scrolling scenery, attack formations, and ships repeated many times during each level. Also, your extra weapons can run out after a while, which makes the game considerably more frustrating. But if you are a diehard Defender fan, Menace still might appeal to you. Tony Barnes. He's certainly dating his gaming knowledge there with the Defender comparison. If you're gonna do that, it would be Gradius or R-Type. You're really stretching going all the way back to Defender. But he's the only one so far that has given the game any criticism. And yes, I would say the game deserves a bit of critique. The ammo certainly runs out too quickly. You can get through maybe 2 ways, and then on the next one you'll have to replenish it. And generally in shoot-em-ups, weapons are the constant. If you power them up, they're supposed to be good until you die. He also mentioned how the enemies will eventually repeat themselves, which was always a relief for me. The level ends when it's done scrolling. How many enemies you face is dependent on how good you are. I usually faced 2 full waves of every enemy, and then 1 or 2 from the third. Seeing them a second time helps with the memorization, which is part of the deal with these types of games. I wouldn't criticize that. And lastly, I would push back on his characterization of the graphics being merely fair. They're excellent. And of course, when it comes to highlighting the graphic capabilities of a machine that was actually affordable, it never hurts to compare it with the much more expensive and better selling, for some reason, PC. Gotta love those PC speaker bloops and farts. Now, generally with DOS, the essence of the gameplay is there. Most of the ways feature less enemies, which I'm not sure if that's to adjust difficulty or if that's for technical reasons. The score area, it's all a single 320 by 200 screen on DOS, but on the Amiga, it has a higher resolution on the bottom. There's obviously no parallax, although seeing any kind of scrolling on DOS at that time is impressive. 16-color EGA graphics aren't even going to compare with 16 Amiga colors, let alone 64 out of the 4,096 color palette. But again, the essence is there if you can't get it on any other platform. And to pad my review with a few more positives, because you're probably starting to think that I hate this game, and you wouldn't necessarily be far off in that opinion. But it's more nuanced than that. This is a classic in the sense that it gets talked about. And obviously there would be reasons for that. Back in the day, it was even on a national television show.
I understand Lou's a pretty hot Menace player.
As you can see, it's done in full overscan.
Lou, actually, you were mentioning you think some of the Amiga games are actually better than the arcade games.
I think some of the later ones really surpass even the most contemporary of coin-op games.
Well, these graphics are pretty hot, that's for sure.
Of course, PBS was never exactly brimming with ratings, but you gotta love the Computer Chronicles. And if we're gonna mention them, I would be utterly remiss to not concurrently shout out a favorite of mine, Pacbilly, who does the occasional brilliantly awkward parody of that show.
My guests today are the father and son comedy team of Leonard Trammell, the disappointment to his father, and the overbearing parent himself.
A TRS-80 color computer, a Commodore 64, and an Apple II walk into a bar. And the bartender looks around the room and says to them,
Okay, that's not really even a joke there, Jack. That's just the beginning of a joke, and then you laughed at it.
Check the description for links to Pacbilly. Beyond the graphics, there's the music. Let's listen to the direct hookup. I gave this game the time it needed to be one, and while I didn't enjoy every second of the gameplay, I never got tired of the music. Menace, along with the game's Soda Sodan and the Killing Game Show, that personifies the Amiga to me. Rock and roll. The best of '89 from Amiga Plus. Menace is perhaps the best, if it moves, plastic game ever put on an Amiga. If you don't have a rapid-fire joystick, buy one. If you already have one, get ready to buy another, because you'll probably break the first. How do you break a rapid-fire joystick? Isn't that the point of it? To not keep pressing the buttons? And as a reviewer, if you're requiring your audience to buy a new peripheral just to play the game, then that's probably a negative that you should be mentioning. Of course, I play legit, and I'm not sure a rapid-fire joystick would help you in a game where ammo is precious. Although if you have a gamepad, you might consider that. With this joystick, I kept having to switch between my index and middle fingers to fire. When I played the other versions, I used a gamepad, and my thumb never tired, although it wasn't as fast as my fingers. And a quick break for Live Me.
Why Tony Smith? Why DMA Design? Why? Why is your fucking name here? I've gotten almost to the last level. yet I have to deal with you fuckers?
And yes, in a game where those names are already on the main menu, why are they there mocking the player in the high scores? Coming soon from Info, November-December 1988, and reviewed in their very next issue, January-February 89. First, some backhanded compliments about Info from Personal Publishing Magazine. Lots of computer publications make a big deal about their intentions to go entirely desktop published if and when the technology finally meets their standards. So we've got to tip our hats to Info. The results are admittedly amateurish, but there's no denying that these guys took the risk and plunged ahead. The response? We hope that any amateurish results are tolerated, if not enjoyed, by our readers, appreciating that Info is not produced by a legion of slick, experienced magazine professionals who think that personal computers are just another profitable ad vehicle to cash in on. Always mad respect for me that Info did it with an Amiga, and before that, the Commodore 64. And I'd hope it's the same with these videos. Anything that looks amateurish is done on purpose. You're not as slick as you think you are, YouTubers reading off your teleprompters. I'll take heart every day over manufactured. Receiving 4 out of 5 stars. Don't even think about playing Menace without a rapid-fire joystick. Unless you have the fastest trigger finger in the galaxy. After all I've said about you, Tom, you touch me with those compliments. The graphics, sound, and animation are the same high quality we've come to expect from British import arcade games. There are 6 levels, each with its complement of alien nasties, and it only took me about 10 hours of continuous play to get to the 5th level. Menace is mindless alien blasting at its best, madly addictive, and nearly impossible to win. Tom Malcolm. And as a nod and compliment to Tom, who was so gracious to me, when I first read that review, I was struggling to get to the 5th level. His talent with this one put me through an existential crisis. I'm proud of you, Tom. Backhanded compliments galore today. I would take Tom getting to the 5th level with his rapid-fire joystick over the supposed Longplays, which are clearly cheating. They'll have full shields throughout the entire game, maybe full cannons and lasers along with it. Edits where they start the next level with more shields and cannons than they ended the last level with. And that's where my opinion on this game has to come from, as perhaps one of the only people to have ever legitimately beaten this game. Do I get satisfaction from this pain? Actually, kind of yes. Not only with knowing that I can do it and you can't, but I like the pain. What you hear in the background is not simply complaints. It's me motivating myself to win. Anger got me past levels 4 and 5 to see the finish line. Although to actually cross the line, you kind of have to let go of the anger and get a little meditative. I only played this game because I thought it would be quick and easy, and then a month passes. I don't think this is even in the top 10 of hardest games I have played for this channel, but it is the single most frustrating. I didn't actually play this game for a month straight. I take 3, 4, sometimes 5 days between sessions. I didn't want to be playing this, but I refused to let it beat me, and it felt good to win. There is satisfaction for a gamer like me to win a game like Menace. But that's a pretty niche market. You're supposed to win a game like this. That's the point. And let's say Tom Malcolm and Lewis Wallace are both better than me at this game. Kinda hard to believe based on Lewis's gameplay from the Computer Chronicles, but as an argument, they seem to have enjoyed themselves on the subjective level. And who am I to say they're wrong? But as a reviewer, it ain't all about you. Most of these reviewers couldn't find a single thing to criticize. They're recommending you purchase a device to cheat. Objectively, most people are not going to win this game, and it's only 6 levels. I can't recommend that. And not only do they refuse to see past themselves by recommending it to others, it's among the best. Info, November-December 89. The 4th best Amiga arcade game, the 2nd best Commodore 64 arcade game. As for shoot-em-ups, our hands-down favorite is the frenzied and colorful Menace. And there's the man himself, Tom Malcolm, who I don't always agree with, but I do like covering him. Tom's 3rd favorite game, period. Menace. Anything from Psygnosis I like very much. Which one varies week to week, though I spent the most hours with Menace. And one more for good measure a couple months earlier. I have often regretted not giving the Amiga version of this game 5 stars, so it's with considerable pleasure that I can honestly give them to this incredible translation. The graphics aren't, of course, Amiga quality, but are nevertheless extremely good. Menace is a textbook example of how to write an arcade game. Everything about it, from the soundtrack to the last detail of the background, adds to the experience. This is a game that will stay on your top shelf for a long time to come. I'll never play it again. Tom giving the 64 version 5 out of 5 stars and pretty much retroactively giving the same to the Amiga. It's a perfect game. Everyone get it. There are no objective flaws here. Am I being too hard on this? I don't know. I can't see this appealing to the general populace for more than a week. And it's even missing a couple appealing factors to the masochists. I beat Marble Madness on the Amiga. A year later, I played it on the NES. In less than 5 attempts, I beat that. I feel confident I can beat that game anywhere. This game, I beat once. In 2 weeks of collecting extra footage for the Amiga and DOS and the Commodore 64 and even the Atari ST, I never beat this game again. I got so good that it hurt me because I was getting to the end boss with an enemy still on the screen that I didn't want to be there. It's a timing thing. I got rid of the other enemies too fast. That's not something the typical masochist likes. Once they beat the game, they want to know that they can beat it again. And while I like a continued challenge to my games, not here. As for the 64, I would agree with Tom in terms of translation. It is not an exception, rather the rule, to be impressed with the Commodore 64. I'll take it over DOS. Not only does it beat DOS in terms of parallax, because that has none, it beats the ST, which has it, but it's simple. It's faster than the ST, and actually the ST is either the best or the worst version because of that. It's easier because it's slow, which you might like, but it takes forever. Video for the ST appearing for the first time on my channel. It's me playing via emulation on my Windows 98 PC, hooked up to a CRT television. And despite the difficulty, this is actually my favorite level. I really love the gradients, the mountains, and the alien enemies. Magazine Lightning Round Menace is a title more than worthy of consideration. Compute covering the DOS version. The graphics are superb. Be forewarned, this is an addictive game, and you probably won't have any short play sessions. 30 minutes max for me. ST Art Start, did you get it? Had a nice full-page ad. ST Log rounds out the American perspectives. An intense, albeit mindless, shootemup that truly utilizes the 68,000 microchip to its fullest. Or perhaps its slowest via the ST. Menace is the kind of game that makes the ST look so much more impressive than Nintendo and Sega. They're showing an Amiga screenshot. Menace rates a solid A. Buy it. ST Amiga format. Menace will have you hooked for hours on end. A recommended dose of pure arcade violence, just what the doctor ordered. Jason Holborn, 90%. Zap. Destroy the planet Draconia? How am I supposed to do that? Write a competent review? How am I supposed to do that? For a 10 or 15 quid, this would have been brilliant. As it is, try before you buy. Graphics and sounds are indeed superb, but it has to be said that the laser show gameplay doesn't quite live up to the polish. The various screenshots made my trousers yearn for the lavatory. It's a definite grower. Why do you let teenagers write magazines, Britain? Only 6 stages, which aren't too difficult, even on the expert level. Nicely done, but a bit easy. No screenshots of the last level, but it's easy. 79%. Once titled Draconia, only a few marks can be awarded for originality, and the few additional weapons are difficult to select before the icon scrolls off screen. But a competent blast is always fun. Also, 78%, a little mixed from the Europeans. And finally, for perspective on gaming in general, let's talk about DMA itself via my notes where I pondered what the acronym might stand for. They're a bit unclear themselves. Direct memory access doesn't mean anything. I'm going with mine. Chapter 4 of the Complete History of DMA Design by Mike Daly, getting into Lemmings. In the end, the game would ship over 55,000 copies of the Amiga version on the first day alone. To put this into perspective, Day's first game, Menace, sold a whopping 20,000 copies, while Blood Money sold double that at 40,000. This was the full life of the product, and not first day sales. sales of the original Lemmings after conversions would have topped 15 million copies worldwide. Take sales figures with a grain of salt when it's coming from the mouth of the actual people building their own legacies, but it's still worth noting. Receipts will be nice, speaking on the behalf of truth seekers, which is apparently not Wikipedia, who cites what I just showed you. But in terms of DMA, it all started right here. And I guess we have those reviewers who couldn't or wouldn't be bothered to actually win to thank for that. Imagine a world where the reviewers actually noted how frustrating this game actually is. Where it did not make multiple best of the year lists. Would it still sell 20,000 copies? And if it doesn't, does Blood Money get made, which sells 40,000? If neither of those sell, does Lemmings get made, which sells millions? And if Lemmings doesn't get made, there's no Grand Theft Auto, there's no Rockstar. I'm glad I covered this. Historically, it was worth it. And if you're okay with playing 3 levels of a 6-level game, then it might still be a classic for you. But if you want to cross the finish line, which admittedly felt great to do, you'll be in for some pain. It can't be recommended for most. Written reviews at shot97retro.blogspot.com. Links to my Discord in the description. I'm done with Twitter and Threads. Be sure to check out Pacbilly. I also covered Silpede a while ago. I think that was the first time I actually read from a magazine. I'll also point you to Turrican and Jumpman. I will return when I feel inspired. Goodbye.